ICAC, no mention was made whatsoever. Who else would like to speak? Albert Chan? Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Well, just now, I already gave a forewarning that I would be proposing to delete 371, $190.8 million. That's the spending, the annual spending by the GIS on PR work locally, and it's a rather substantial cut. But then there are good reasons for this. Basically, if you look at this amendment, we are not targeting the journalists working for the GIS or the ISD. They are civil servants. Actually, I'm targeting the senior government officials' performance. 371 is an amendment moved by me. I have moved a number of amendments involving the cut in staff of the ISD. And if you look at this concerning the ISD and its duties, is responsible for the following work: arranging for media to cover certain press conferences and so on, and public activities, and issuing public or press releases, and arranging for government officials to attend radio programs, live broadcast programs, and also public affair programs of the TV and so on, and also live broadcasts of government press conferences, and also briefing sessions, and also it has to set up an online database, and also to deal with public inquiries and media inquiries and so on. Well, back in 2009, it cost $115 million, and last year it went up to $190 million. So the increase was 23%, and then in 2009, if you look at the reestablishment, 243, this year 247. I'm proposing the cut for the spending by the ISD, and the main reason is that the scope of the work of the department has already changed in nature, and I would not be say that they are not doing their job in terms of their professionalism. Indeed, that's not the case. So, with regard to the ISD, the reason why I'm cutting their spending, that's because for the establishment or existence of the ISD, well, I think different departments are actually breeding lazy bones, and some officials rarely or even never bother to contact the media. Well, I can give you some figures, and I'm sure you understand it. First, well, there has been an increase in the number of press releases being issued by the ISD. Well, in the past, well, the officials would approach the media direct, and now they are relying more and more on press releases. Do you know the number? In 2009, well, if you look at the number of press releases, 40,000. But then this year, how many have they released or issued? Can somebody answer this question? Well, this year, we are talking about 220,000, Mr. Deputy. So from 90,000, from 40,000 in 2009, rising to 220,000 this year, 5 times. So they have information officers and they have issued press releases. But then how come in a matter of just 5 years, how come you're talking about 5 times or a 5-fold increase? So what's the problem? And if you look at other figures, then you'll understand why we have to scrap this department altogether. If you look at press conferences and briefing sessions, actually during the past 3 years there has also been increase. In 2011, 1,073, and last year it went up to 1,699. And then in 2013, if you look at the number of press conferences being held, well, if you look at the actual number when compared to the expected number back then, or the estimated number, is somewhat higher. And if you look at the number of press conferences and briefings, well, obviously, well, there have been more breaking news, something happening spontaneously involving Pt14 and its subdivided units saga, and also the Hong Kong TV saga. And as a result, bureau directors have to meet the media time and again, or even several times a day. That's why they have to release the information very frequently. That's why the number went up very substantially last year. And one of the reasons for issuing press releases, that's a very important point, Mr. Deputy. For officials giving interviews to the media, the number dropped very substantially. It's very strange. For the other figures, they all went up very drastically. But then when it comes to meeting the media, well, the number dropped significantly. In other words, once you have the information officers doing the job, then you never bother to talk to the media. So if you can talk to them direct, then the IOs do not have to work so hard for the whole day, because they are just relying on the IOs doing the job for them. So because they are very scared, they dare not meet the media. And as a result of that, we are spending a lot more public money on it. So I'll give you more figures. Please do not hide those figures. Well, in 2012, well, officials giving interviews, well, 4,300 times, and then this year it dropped to 3,700. It should have gone up. There should have been more interviews. All right, with more press releases, actually you're talking about 5-fold increase. But then how come when it comes to throwing interviews, you're giving fewer? And then when it comes to arranging for media to visit their departments, well, the number also dropped. So if it had not been the MTR or XRL saga or scandal, there would not have been arrangements for press visits. So you're actually hiding something up. For example, for the SEL, all of a sudden you had this archaeological finds and also ancient shafts. That's why, if you look at the figure, in 2012, 263, and this year only 150. So the government has the responsibility. You should have taken the initiative. Of course, the press or the media would like to visit these places. All right, in the past, the media tried to contact the person in charge, and sometimes I would try to make use of my lawmaker status and take them to some of these places. So if you look at the overall operation, obviously, you are just making use of it so that you would be releasing information or disseminating information which is to your advantage. But then when it comes to officials giving interviews to the media, it has dropped significantly. So there is a lot less interaction. This is not conducive. This is not healthy, because when society advances, there should be more interaction between the government and the media. In other words, the media would have a better idea as to what is happening, and after making inquiries, they would be able to ask follow-up questions. And as a result, in terms of the accuracy of the information, that would improve. So instead of using or resorting to sophistry, and then you just gloss over what's happened by releasing press releases. In particular, when it comes to the governance of the government, this is most undesirable. This is also not good for the quality of governance. This is actually a disaster. All right, this is something being prepared or doctored by the netizens. All right, if you look at the SAR government, if you look at the accountability team, actually they have become negative assets for the entire government. All right, Mr. Deputy, well, we have the SCS here. He is not yet a negative asset. But then if you look at the various policy areas, all the bureau directors have now become negative assets. Well, we have STH, Anthony Cheung, -5, and of course, Pt14 comes at the bottom. I've already told him that he should not have become the bureau director. All right, the bureau director of subdivided units is -27, and today he we actually had a pro-government group asking schools not to allow students to take part in the Occupy Central movement. But then if you look at the SHA, Jang Tak-sing, when he was at St. Paul Co-ed high school, secondary school student, he was also sentenced to 2 years jail. So during his school days or student days, he committed a criminal offense and he was sentenced to jail, and now he's the bureau director. So are you slapping on the face of Jang Tak-sing? So he should have come out to meet the media. He should not have hidden behind the scene. He should have come out to explain things to the media. But then he has refused to do so. So you have actually hidden yourself up, and then you just ask the IOs to do the job for you. So what kind of competence is that? So when it comes to public administration, you should be facing the media, you should be facing the public, because you should be subject to the monitoring by the fourth power in our society. And then for questions asked in this council, all right, I'm not interested in speaking when there are so few people here. So I like to call for account.
Mr. Albert Chan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like all members to realize this. The existence of the Information Services Department and expenditure would only allow the principal officials to meet less with the media. And that's the phenomenon of sliding of slips in governance on the part of government. Because they try to avoid the media, that's only because they haven't improved in the way they handle issues. You know, public administration, as I always said, is not a subject that you could easily master by reading textbooks or learning from a master or whatever. Well, you have to take part in public affairs. You may even have to make a mistake. And over time, when you have accrued enough experience, then you could take on the important job in public administration. You know, that's why administrative officers who became principal officials do not enjoy the same popularity as others, like professor or whatever, who are not administrative officers. And but of course, for people with no experience in public administration, they're going to make mistake after mistake, and that's why their popularity plunges, like 689. Now, the personal reputation is not important, but if they make mistakes in governance, at the end of the day, it's the people of Hong Kong who would suffer. Now, they don't know how to deal with matters. They don't know how to manage crisis. And of course, they will lead to a decline in the quality of governance. Another problem with the Information Services Department is that it discriminates against internet radio operators. Now, I said we should cut the budget of the ISD because we don't want to build reliance. We don't want officials to hide behind the Information Services Department and avoid the media. But I must criticize the Information Services Department. Many internet radio journalists have asked to attend some press conferences, but because they are reporters of internet radio, they were refused entry. Actually, the ISD refused to issue journalist cards to internet radio journalists. I think they're out of touch with the modern days. I'm sure some internet radio news has a bigger following than TV news even. So you compare it to some of the licensed TV operators or radio operators, definitely the hit rate of internet radio may be far higher than the audienship of licensed radio and TV. So it doesn't make sense why they don't acknowledge the existence of internet radio reporters. Of course, the internet radios have their own editorial independence. It's up to them how they cover news. Many news organizations have become official bodies, but definitely not the internet radios. Thank you. Mr. Kwok-hung. I'd like to go back to Carrie Lam, the Chief Secretary of Administration, and why her pay should be docked. You weren't here, you didn't hear what I said. Actually, we've moved ahead a lot. You know, with the mistakes, problems she has, there's so much to talk about. I'm saying that she says things, something different all the time. I'm not even talking about the time when she was the secretary. I'm talking when she's become the chief secretary. On the 3rd of July 2012, the third day of her assuming the post of CS, she accompanied C.Y. Leung on a district visit. She said, in the past, the government spent a lot of resources on the 10 major infrastructure projects. In future, the government would pay more attention to people's livelihood issues, and there should be 10 major projects on people's livelihood. And we would also propose ways to promote the local autonomy. Now, this report was in a Chinese media organization, so we're not putting words in her mouth. Maybe good to put on cosmetics, maybe makes people look better, but if someone's look is not good, putting on cosmetics might make her look even uglier. So where are the 10 major projects on people's livelihood? Where are they? We heard about the 10 core projects. There's cost overrun for the express rail link, and there's a cost overrun for the Lantang boundary crossing facilities.
She, being the CS, just wanted to win applause. He said that there should be 10 major infrastructure projects for the sake of livelihood, and the government in the past focused on 10 major infrastructure projects, and now we should spend more for people's livelihood. Now, C.Y. Leung introduced the OALA and also subsidy for low-income families. Now, what about these 10 major livelihood projects? I think they are all too fake. She's the CS, but she spoke nonsense. I'm here to approve projects or approve funding this year alone for project overruns. All right, just the money for the 10 major infrastructure projects, it has they've accumulated to tens of billions of dollars. Now, if C.Y. Leung has forgotten his promises now, first year after his election, he was okay, and second year he just went to the mainland frequently to set up ties with the mainland. Well, the CS is like the chief secretary. When her boss has made a mistake, he should advise him. He should say, Mr. Leung, we have 10 major livelihood projects, so please give us the money to do them. We are debating the budget here, and John Zhang would like to save our money for strategic infrastructural projects 15 years down the road. So will you say that the CS has any leadership at all? I am not framing her. And Carrie Lam showed no remorse. Recently, she blamed legislators who are asking C.Y. Leung to honor his election promises. Is like people like myself. Well, when he was running in the election, C.Y. Leung promised to provide money for the elderly. And now it's almost 20 months after his assumption of office, resumption of office. So what do you mean by the appropriate time? All right, in the third fiscal year, the CE and the CS have not delivered what they have promised. And this very humble legislator, myself, remind the CS to keep her promise. I said that in due course, $50 billion should be set aside to set up a to provide for universal retirement protection, so that Leung can implement universal retirement protection before he finishes his term by 2017. Now, I remember very clearly. Now, I'd like to go to another area. I do believe we should cut the budget for Information Services Department, ISD. Well, when he first assumed office in the first year, there were 40,000 press releases. And do you know how many? Last year, 220,000 press releases. Has Hong Kong grown by 5 times, or have 5 times more incidents have happened in Hong Kong? This is because he wanted to hide his shortcomings and mistakes. Now, Chairman, I'm talking about the ISD now. Well, for every item, he talked about them for 10 times. So it's just like there's an apple here. The government uses 5 different ways to describe it. Well, it's very smooth, or smooth like a trout. And there has been a proliferation of press releases. For instance, I never said I had not done this, so on and so forth. I think this is something to be done for the truth department. Well, you don't have money to alleviate poverty, and you issued 22 press releases to tell us why. Now, we have our own information services as well. LegCo has so many things happening, filibustering, hurling things at government officials, but then the president would just go out and give a stand-up press conference with the journalists. There was no need to issue press releases. And there was nothing to hide. Either they have releases on the internet or through the ISD. Well, all this is really not news. Now, if you've read the book by George Orwell, you know what is meant by truth. You have to tell people what is the truth. You call lies the truth. If you know contemporary Chinese history, you know there is the Department of Propaganda within the Chinese Communist Party. This government is not really doing things. Carrie Lam will say that we have 10 major livelihood projects, and she will list all 10 items that she has done and call them 10 major livelihood projects. She will say that, well, because I've done these are 10 things, these are the 5 or the 10 major livelihood projects we have done. I have no choice but to echo what Mr. Albert Chen said. Carrie Lam doesn't like criticisms. She likes to talk back. Those who are in politics do not say too much. They should not talk back to their opponents. I'd like to tell Carrie Lam today, what I'm reading out is a culture on how to be a public officer. What are the outstanding people? They must have something better than the ordinary people. And they are just ordinary people, but they like to speak up. There are people who are willing to stay calm even if they are being criticized. And now, for someone who has ambition, they or he should not he should not get agitated because he or she has a few opposers. Well, if you're in politics, you should not be too vociferous. You should do real things. I think you have mixed up two proverbs. No. Yes, a dog from the province of Shu is barking at the sun, and then the other dogs bark at the stars, because that dog didn't know what the sun was, and it barked at the sun. Well, you did listen very carefully. Sushi, very talented poet, well, I said, why do you want to waste your time arguing with me? You just tell the people of Hong Kong why you have done this or why you haven't done that. There is no need for you to issue 220,000 press releases. One of the duties of Carrie Lam is alleviation of poverty. However, she has not done it effectively. She has got it the wrong way. She said we should eliminate intergenerational poverty. But what about the elderly persons? Well, they may not have the next generation after they've passed away. Either they're in heaven or in hell, or they may reincarnate. Well, I heard that the FTU has been talking about helping the elderly for more than 3 decades. Well, for the elders, there is no way they can improve their standard of living. For children or kids, as they grow up, if they have proper upbringing, they can improve their quality or standard of life, but not the elders. So isn't the CS wrong? You'd rather, according there is the ancient saying, you'd rather bully the elders but not the children. So you should give priority to helping those who are incapable of helping themselves. I'm not saying that intergenerational poverty is not a matter of concern, but with proper upbringing, kids, when they grow up, should see their lives improved. If they can't, then there is something wrong with this society. Now, a person has contributed to this community, and when they have grown old, they should be well looked after. FS John Zhang blamed the elders, saying that they will be a burden to society. There will be no money to look after them. And I think Carrie Lam has the same idea. This is trying to polarize society. Are we so poor? Is Hong Kong so poor? We have $750 billion. Now, if you are helping the poor, why have you neglected one sector of the community, namely the elders? It is wrong. It's already, she is already not doing the right thing in poverty alleviation. She was once the director of social welfare. And I think it is wrong for CY Leung to appoint her to do the job of poverty alleviation, or perhaps she doesn't know herself well enough. She was the one who agreed to cut CSSA payments by 11.2% before she moved on to another position, before she was posted to London. She was someone who supported lump sum grants for the social welfare sector. So these two things are not conducive to alleviation of poverty, because social welfare organizations cannot plan their budget according to the actual needs. So how can Carrie Lam help the poor? She cut CSSA payments by 11.2%. And she also said that a person, a new arrival, should only be eligible for CSSA after he stayed here for 7 years. That's been ruled out of order by the court. Calm down, please, Mr. Leung Kwok-hung. Calm down, please. All right, I'll calm down for a while. Yes, I think all of us should take a walk.
有冇委員要發言？
Does any member wish to speak? Mr. Raymond Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to continue with Head 72 ICAC. 13 amendments moved by Mr. Kwok-hung in cutting the budget of the ICAC. I'd like to continue with my earlier speech. During my last round, I was talking about the dysfunctioning ICAC, and even the administration apparently has deliberately degenerated the ICAC so that it can become a toothless tiger. A very recent example can show this and illustrate it. Well, actually, we are all very agitated about this with regard to the PAC or the audit report criticizing the MEF, and there was a public hearing, and one of the foci was that the ICAC actually, as early as 2010, already made or gave an advice that with the economy turning for the better, there is no need for the MEF to continue with its operation, and therefore is suggested that for the unused funds of the MEF, they should be returned to the government. And yet the administration decided in 2012. So I was referring to the advice given by the ICAC back in 2010. And yet in 2012, when the administration came to the FC of this council applying for additional funding for the MEF, there was no mention whatsoever by the government about the ICAC's advice back in 2010. And therefore, the public should query why the administration had deliberately withheld this from the FC. And the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Wong Ho-yun, of course, denied that. He said that the suggestion was made by one of the members of the Crime Prevention or Corruption Prevention Advisory Committee of the ICAC. So it's only for reference, and it's not a concrete suggestion, and the administration just ignore it. So either it ignore it or it just dismiss it, or else it would not have come to this council the following year for an additional injection into the fund. So according to the Permanent Secretary, it's just an individual member's views. But then the administration still followed the advice of the ICAC in the sense that the unused funds of the MEF were returned to the government. And at the time, Mr. Alan Leung, who's not here now, and immediately Mr. Leung refuted that. All right, the ICAC has already asked you to return the unused funds to the administration. So the logic behind this, obviously, was, well, he was trying to be modest. All right, you are not really doing a good job, and therefore I'm giving you this reason, that is, the economy has already improved, and therefore there is no need for us to provide funding for the mega events, and we should not be spending public money on this. So after listening to this, we can all understand that the logic behind this advice is that you should return the funds to the administration. So even a primary school student would understand it. But then according to the Permanent Secretary, he said that the judgment of the administration was that such advice was not important. So you're saying that the CPAC of the ICAC made this suggestion and it's not important. That's why they did not bother to disclose it to the FC of this council. That's why Alan Leung said that, all right, well, unfortunately, you have admitted that this is your judgment back then, and therefore I can pursue it no further. But then we are actually trying to cut the funding for the ICAC. Well, apparently, whatever you said was just for reference. How come the CPAC, when members of the CPAC made such important advice without being followed up on, how come you did not take it up further? So are you saying that these are just something coming up from an individual member, and so long as the administration decides to ignore it, then you just close file, and then the responsibility can be passed on to the individual members of the CPAC. But apparently the ICAC felt that there's a problem and it has asked you to fold it up, and yet you just dismiss it. So should you have followed up more closely? And then apparently the administration just ignored the advice and then just dismissed it. But then from the angle of the ICAC, have you pursued it further? Have you taken it up with the administration? All right, this is hard proof that the administration is taking the ICAC as a toothless tiger. Actually, the administration would rather the ICAC fold up, so that there's no need to go after Timothy Tong, no need to go after Donald Tsang. All right, this is what happens behind the MEF, but then it shows the relationship between the administration and the ICAC. All right, we have used public funds to come up with the report and the advice of the CPAC, and yet nothing follows. So we can actually follow up on this. So, but then we are not able to take it up with the ICAC. We can only take it up with the administration. All right, the ICAC is into its 40th year now. But then, in the wake of the recent scandals, has it learned any lesson from it? Or is it that for the 40 years experience or the capital that it has accumulated? Well, by that, we are referring to the golden brand name that it has managed to build up over the past 4 decades. So, has the ICAC lost its shine altogether? Obviously, the latter is true. With regard to the justifications for supporting the 11 Amendments moved by Mr. Leung, I still have a small part to comment on. So I have to collate my information. That's why I'll be speaking later. Next, Mr. Albert Chan. Chairman, I was talking about 371. And I hope that the accountability team can look into it more carefully. Even if I am not able to successfully scrap the $100 or so million for the ISD, actually, Mr. Chairman, you should have organized a training course for the accountability officials, so that they would not just be hiding behind the team of information officers. I'd like to move on to 372. There's a cut of subhead 000 by cutting some $67.4 million, and it's tantamount to the publication cost for the ISD for the whole year. So there are 2 reasons. 1, for environmental protection. Number 2, for cost effectiveness. And if I can refer you to some information here, well,
spending on government publications over the years has not come down much. There's not been substantial reduction. But then given the latest development in electronic publication and the fact that there are fewer and fewer people reading printed publications and media, we don't see any corresponding reduction in spending on the printing of publications. For example, 2007, publication cost $58.4 million. This year it's gone up to $67.4 million. But then revenue in publications dropped substantially. 2006, $10 million in revenue. This year it's dropped to $5 million. But there's still the same staff of 61 over the years. So perhaps this is because the operation is rigid and bureaucratic. They just keep to the same old operation, and they are not under pressure to cut cost. But then the audit actually has pointed out various problems. In 2013, the PAC audit report, the sales of government applications dropped by 95% between 2006 and last year. And, sales of, and then income from sales of publications dropped by 89%. A substantial drop. But then the Information Services Department did not try to recover cost through the sales of publication, because there is for many government services there is the full cost recovery principle, say when you apply for a driving license and so on. But then on the sales of government publications, the Information Service Department has not kept to this principle. So it's not acting in line with the rule. Just now I referred to the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau. Their spending on publicity far exceeds the budget. Information Service Department, well, a publicity machine, it totally ignores the mechanism, the policy, and guidelines issued by other departments. Perhaps the ISD is above the other departments because it takes control of the publicity machine, so it can do whatever it wants as long as 6, 8, 9 and other principal officials are happy. Now for the cost that cannot be recovered from publication, that was $4 million and $2 million respectively in 2009 and 2012. Well, perhaps the total amount is not much, but if you look at the way the department handles this matter, you'll find that it's quite unacceptable. It is a mistake. So that's why we need to substantially cut the ISD spending on publications. The audit also pointed out that stock has to be written off after some time. That's the basic administrative requirement. But then the Information Services Department did not write off some of the publications or books that couldn't sell. Because storage costs something too. The government has to cost everything. And the ISD has not made timely application to the Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau for writing off outdated stock. And then in March 2012, the audit found outdated stock was worth $9.4 million. Well, Kwok-hung, how many tins of dried diced fish and luncheon meat would that be? So this is wasteful behavior. It hurts our public coffer. Well, the ISD actually hasn't made much improvement over the years. It's still publishing a lot of publications. In 2012, there are still 84 types of publications that are published by the ISD, and the printing costs $11 million. Actually, the most of such publications have been uploaded to the web page. The Gazette, the ISD has to print Gazette. But actually, Electronic Gazette was launched in December 2000. Still, the Information Services Department handed out 18,300 copies of Gazette, costing some $5.8 million in printing. Now, with increasing electronic dissemination of government information, we don't need to print hard copies. As I said, we need to protect the environment as well. These publications, how many trees do we need to print these publications? I think we should ask the Green Group to do an assessment. And the ISD should be given an award for destroying forests. So the best way to force the ISD to review its policy is to cut the spending. So they have no money to spend. That's good. That's why I'm proposing to cut the spending under Head 74, $67.4 million. Now, I don't see why there's need for this budget. so it can be cut. Next, also head 74, amendment number 373, to cut the estimate by $54.1 million. This is equivalent to the full-year budget of the ISD spending on publicity and promotional efforts. So $54.1 million, again, we don't know how many tens of thousands of tins of the diced fish and luncheon meat that could buy. Now, there's an increase of $3 million compared to the previous year. The increase is relatively modest compared to that for other heads. But if you look at this item, you also think that it's a waste of public money. The audit actually commented on the waste of public money. That is, in the same newspaper, there's duplication of notices, government notices. That's obviously wasteful. In 2012, the government spent some $42 million on such matters. The audit recommended that for recruitment advertisements, they could be uploaded to the website. There's no need to publish it in newspapers because people could go to the government website to access such recruitment advertisements. There's no need to go to read it on newspapers because electronic information travels faster and wider than printed media. The second comment of the audit is that since 2002, the government's been doing surveys on the effectiveness of its publicity effort. I mean, it's like the department's just going through the motion, you know, for private organizations where they place advertisements and whether there's any response to the advertisements, whether people actually come and buy because of the advertisement. Commercial concerns will certainly do an assessment. Even for election, for instance, what strategy we use for publicity, where we put our resources. Shall we use banners, posters, or place advertisements and so on? How we spend the money to promote the candidates. Now, we do assessments too, so it's not just businesses who would do that. But then the audit pointed out that since 2002, it means for some 10 years, the Information Service Department never did any survey on the effectiveness of his publicity effort. So he just asked for money, and when it's got money, he just spent it. Whether the money is well spent, whether it's value for money, whether they achieved the desired results or effect from the publicity effort, they never did any survey. Perhaps it's after Greedy Zhang, and now it's 689. These departments are becoming less and less accountable. Now, even principal officials are not accountable. Well, Anthony Jones keeps making a mistake. Subdivided unit Paul Chen is not affected. He can still stay in his post. So how do you expect other civil servants to render themselves accountable? And there are city officials who try to profit. They could make tens of millions of dollars by selling a site. Well, I'll stop here. Otherwise, the chairman would say I'm digressing. Now, the ISD should do assessment on everything it does and whether it's effective. So it's rather lazy and passive. But of course, people would say that with a bureaucracy, people become lazy easily. But then still, I'm a bit disappointed about the performance of the ISD. Those in charge in the department should be more proactive. They should try to demonstrate their professionalism. They shouldn't be made to do do things. So that's why I'm proposing to cut this budget here. Amendment number 375 again, is to reduce Head 74 by $43.2 million. That's equivalent to the full year's budget of the ISD in promoting civic duties. But then, this kind of publicity is not as effective as just one comment from the name card secretary. That is, we have to tolerate. We have to understand what is permitted by the law. If people just relieve themselves anywhere, then how can we, civic duty means we must point out people's mistakes. It's like with the Little Bug campaign. But then the official asks us to be tolerant. If we see people defecate and urinate anywhere, we just ignore them. Then Hong Kong will become a city of excretion. So this is against common sense. If we have principal official doing that, why do we even bother with publicity? Now, I'm not digressing, Chairman. Here we're talking about the ISD using this budget for enhancing civic duties, awareness. So the ISD should have come out and pointed out that the secretary was wrong to encourage tolerance. They should point out his mistake. This would be more effective than spending $43 million in publicity. So the government wastes a lot of money doing a lot of publicity, but then the senior officials, like this name card secretary, the way he behaves, he acts against common sense. Does any other member wish to speak?
有冇委員要發言？
Does any member wish to speak? Mr. Leung Kwok-hung? Chairman, in my last round of speech, I was saying that someone who is like the chief secretary must have his own philosophy in governance. Of course, when Carrie Lam accepted his appointment from Siwan Leung, she must have her own conviction for governance, or he or she must have agreed to Siwan Leung's governance conviction. So when we appraise her, we'll see whether her conviction is right or wrong and whether she's doing it properly. As I was saying, Carrie Lam said that there were 10 major livelihood projects. 2 years have almost passed. Well, on the 3rd of July 2012, when she met the press, she made such remarks as almost 2 years afterwards. So has she delivered what she promised on that day? And secondly, if not, shouldn't she make some announcement now? If yes, has she delivered what she promised? Well, according to my own research, nothing more has been said or done about the so-called 10 livelihood infrastructure projects. Because after the establishment of this term of government, perhaps it has run into too many obstacles. And Carrie Lam said that we spent too much time and energy and money on the 10 major infrastructure projects, and now we'll turn to the 10 major livelihood projects. In fact, the 10 major infrastructures continued after such remarks, and we've seen budget overrun. So I think Carrie Lam owes us justice because she has not delivered what she promised, and she has not stopped the emergence of things like the 10 major infrastructure projects. Then, of course, she is rather incompetent. And her conviction is also rather confused. For instance, the harm of the lump sum grant in the social welfare sector. When she was the director of social welfare in the year 2000, she implemented the lump sum grant system. She was not really the director of social welfare, rather the deputy secretary for the treasury. Regardless of what hat she was wearing, she was responsible for the implementation of the lump sum grant. I don't see why Mr. John Kwok-hung is not here to comment on this. There must be some rectification of this lump sum grant system. First, in this sector, the top officials of NGOs have fattened themselves, and they have trimmed the frontline staff, and because they cannot pay enough, they cannot employ the right persons. Well, Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, I think you understand that we have had many debates on this subject in this council, and you should not repeat them here. Point taken, Chairman. Carrie Lam has not rectified this mistake, and as a result, we have a bottleneck in poverty alleviation. And secondly, she also cut CSSA payment by 11.2%. All right, these are things gone, passed, and she also set the rule she also set the 7-year rule for new arrivals to be eligible for CSSA, and this has been overruled by the court. So she is doing this to suppress spending in social welfare.
So what are the 10 livelihood projects then? All right, I might have been too stupid. And so first is the East Kowloon project. This is a complete mess as far as her governance is concerned. While Carrie Lam was the bureau director, she launched the East Kowloon project, and then after she has left the bureau and become the chief secretary, she's still in charge of this. All right, I'm not going to bother you with all the details. And she said that she would be building this monorail so that the cruise terminal and also East Kowloon can be revitalized. So she has this energizing Kowloon East project. So are we going to settle the score with her? Are we going to go after her for her failure? All right, this has nothing to do with poverty alleviation. On poverty alleviation, Carrie Lam thought that she could revitalize the community, and then if she's able to do that, then she'd be able to lift people out of poverty. Well, even if we have the trickling effect, it's not going to benefit the grassroots, so it's a fundamental error on her part. So on this particular issue, I think the fundamental problem is that she's not aware of the root cause of poverty, uneven distribution of resources, and definitely that could only be reverted by government's policies. So that's why I have been saying that without universal retirement protection, we would not be able to stabilize the situation by easing the poverty problem of the elders. Without standard working hours legislation, then we cannot just offer a low-income subsidy to the low-income people, and then we'll be able to improve their living. That cannot be achieved because when you try to offer a low-income subsidy, it's fraught with problems. So you're actually trying to have the pie and eat it. So if you want to improve the livelihood, well, if you want to ease the situation of the minimum wage being too low, and if you're not able to introduce standard working hours legislation, then for those who are working long hours, if they are not properly compensated for overtime work, then if that's not correct in the first instance, then even if you try to offer a subsidy to those low-income families, it's not going to help. That's why in trying to resolve the problem of intergenerational poverty, it's not just about whether you have the money to buy a piece of toy or whether or not we are able to have a hamburger. So we have to resolve this problem of not having food for soul. In simple terms, well, for people working 10 hours, yes, they are getting $300. Well, through the reform of the working hours, then if they are able to make $400 if they work for working 10 hours, then they will be able to work less, and then, or at least that they can make more money. Well, on your comment on the poverty alleviation policy, it has gone far beyond this subject. I think it's a waste of time. I'm not going to comment any further on it. So in other words, she has not really lived up to her promise. Now moving on to another issue that she is responsible for, That's the population policy. So it has now been turned into a cattle's policy. So she's treating her people as bees or cattle. As Don Zhang said that when people age, all right, when we have more people who are old and they are not productive and therefore they have become a burden, and therefore if we want to upgrade ourselves, then we have to have new blood and new population. How can that be done? Well, for people from the mainland, well, 100 plus every day. I've said about that many times. I'm not going to repeat that. All right, if you're going to introduce a lot of barriers or restrictions, so when they come in, instead of allowing them to integrate into our society or become the new force of production, well, you're treating that as welfare. So you're not treating that as part of our population policy. That is, we need these people. These people are able to regenerate, and our overall competitiveness can be enhanced. Then you will have to treat that as welfare. Sorry, Mr. Leung, I have to remind you once again that the subject is about cutting an official's pay, and her population policy is flawed. You should not have commented on the policy that that official is responsible for. You should not have commented on that policy. If Carrie Lam would like to get paid, then she will have to do her job properly. It's not a policy, it's her governance, because she's directly responsible for that. She's not formulating the policy and asking someone else to take over. So she's the formulator, and then she is implementing it, so she is responsible for the entire policy. So it originated from her, and she's responsible for the implementation. So she's responsible for it from cradle to grave. She's in charge of it, and she's coordinating all the bureaus responsible for it. So being the chief commander, if she got it wrong, you can't just say that, all right, it's a bottle, and therefore you cannot put all the blame on her. Well, once again, I like to say that when you comment on the performance of an official, you should not be elaborating on a policy under her portfolio. Well, on the population policy, when Carrie Lam dealt with it, she had not done her job properly, from policy formulation all the way to execution. And there is another controversy, that is she treated people like animals. What did she say? She said that, well, to borrow the phrase of Michael Tian, we are short of people doing the job. That's why we have to consider. All right, if they cannot, the posts cannot be filled by new immigrants, then we will have to import labor. As a result of such remarks, there was an outcry from the grassroots, because for any change in our productivity, if it's done through training of local workers so that they can become skilled workers, then that would be an enhancement of the overall competitiveness of Hong Kong. I have to continue to remind you that, well, the policy issues that you refer to were in the community and in this council, they have been highly controversial. As you do not agree with those policies, you should not have spent so much time on raising your opposition views to these policies as the justifications for cutting the pay of that official. And if you would like to continue that way, then I'll have to stop you. So I've already asked her to be accountable for those policies, and she's responsible for implementing those policies. So there is no reason why I should be going in circles like that here. All right, when it comes to reforms undertaken by Carrie Lam, to what extent can I comment on it? So am I supposed to comment on her remarks or what she has done or whatever? Well, you talk about you're proposing to cut the pay of an official, then of course you can comment on the official's performance and the way he or she has been doing in discharging her duties. But then it's not appropriate for you to comment in detail on the policies under her. I'd like to point out that you're wrong, because this is the Chief Secretary. She is the top official with the entire civil service under her. And then if you say that these policies have nothing to do with her, then who is responsible for those policies? Is that C.Y. Leung? Or if you just follow that rule, then if I refute, then you will immediately rule me out of order. But then these policies are under her. How can she not be accountable for that? Well, Zhou Enlai, if he's not responsible for those policies, then Mao Zedong will have to be responsible for that. Well, again, you're digressing. You can always rule me out of order. All right. In terms of constitutional reforms, Carrie Lam made a very major mistake. She has no integrity whatsoever. So in implementing policies, she has no integrity whatsoever. Well, during the early days of the constitutional reform consultation, she said that there's no restriction whatsoever. We are all ears to all views, and we'll collect all views, and we'll just collect the information after we have gathered all the views. So that's what she promised. And for the pro-establishment camp, they said that they queried, what is the Chief Secretary saying? All right, I'll have to say it. I'll have to speak again in the next round. And again, I like to call a quorum. It's running later into the night.
有冇其他委員要發言？
Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Raymond Chan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shall I continue to speak, or before I continue to speak on Head 74 ICAC, I would like to spend a bit of time to respond to Mr. Albert Chan's speech. He referred to amendment number 375. That is to reduce the estimate of the Information Service Department by $43.2 million, which is equivalent to the full year's budget of the ISD on promoting civic awareness. And now you're asking for money for public education or civic education. But then on basic hygiene issues, Permanent Secretary, principal official, actually, instead of pointing out what's right and wrong, he suggested people to be tolerant. Now, we may spend money to do APIs on drink driving or not doing drink driving, but then there's an official doing drink driving. So you spend money on civic responsibility and education, but then senior officials build unauthorized building works when they tell people not to do so. So why bother spending the money? Now let me come back to ICAC. The 40th anniversary special of the ICAC. This was a joint production between the ICAC and the Xinhua TV production under the China News, the Xinhua News Agency. But then they made a serious mistake, and it could even be a criminal case. In the special, there was high-profile mention of the corruption case involving the former chief secretary when the case had yet to be tried. And then they refer to the case of Nicholas Tse, asking someone to take his place as the driver and saying that the police officer might be guilty as well. So, but this is against the principle of sub judice cases. That is, there shouldn't be comment before the cases are tried. Now, of course, the image of ICAC has been tainted by Timothy Tong, and then you try to revive your image by producing this series. Each episode is about 30 minutes. It's in the form of DVD, and in the third episode, No Fear, it referred to the Raphael Hoy's case. The trial has just started on this case. And then Simon Pei narrated. He said the ICAC would not be afraid because this person occupies high office or his business is huge, and then ICAC would not fear just because of that. So he's trying to bring out message that the ICAC is fearless. No, but then before the case is even tried, how could they do that? Of course, we all believe that there's something wrong with Raphael Hui, but that's not the legal principle we should abide by in Hong Kong. So the highest in an office in the ICAC actually did that. And Hong Kong U law professor said that the ICAC special could cause people to prejudge on Raphael Hoy's case. The ICAC may have to shoulder criminal liability. I don't know if Raphael Hoy's legal team could use this as a defense, and so he could be let off the hook. But then maybe then there won't be a fair trial. And on Nicholas Tse's case, the police officer, Lau Chi-wai, was convicted. He was sentenced to imprisonment for 6 months. But then actually, eventually he won his appeal. He was acquitted. So therefore, in this DVD, the ICAC is committed libel against Mr. Lau. What's the ICAC doing? Why is it being so callous? or has it become a political tool of the ICAC, of CY Leung? They are to remove people who don't agree with CY Leung. It scares people. Can the ICAC be redeemed, really? Now, the former Chief Executive, Donald Tsang, the former Chief Secretary, Raphael Hui, and former Commissioner of ICAC, Timothy Tong, were all implicated in misconduct cases in public office. And that's dealt a serious blow to people's confidence in the ICAC. The incumbent commissioner of ICAC doesn't know his work. He doesn't know the rules. Then how can we be convinced that ICAC could curb corruption? So shouldn't ICAC be punished? That's why I'm asking you to support reducing the budget of the ICAC. Well, there are various amendments to varying degree of reduction. The harshest punishment is to cut the budget by $700 million. And the lightest punishment on the ICAC is just to cut the budget by about $68,900. That is the subvention to the ICAC Welfare Fund, is the full year spending on that. So if you support amendment number 367, moved by Kwok-hung, then at least if you support that, we will show that we have no confidence in the ICAC. Now, it's hard for us to pass a motion of no confidence, but if we could pass this amendment 367, then we are telling the ICAC indirectly that you better watch it, ICAC, the LegCo doesn't trust you. Finally, in recent years, ICAC has kept up close ties with mainland, so the ICAC must be aware that it won't be affected or influenced by the mainland. Now, Timothy Tong's case, I won't say he's a corrupt official, but the higher standard of the ICAC has been twisted or distorted. That shows that Hong Kong officials are keen to meet mainland officials. Even the ICAC commissioner can't tell what's right, can't get his priorities right, and he had to split bills so that he could give lavish entertainment to mainland officials. Now there's a new commissioner, Simon Pei, but we don't have enough confidence that this won't happen again. The ICAC is no longer strict with this practice. Now, I mentioned the 40th anniversary special. They made mistake there. And the ICAC is not investigating cases properly, so this is still a blessing that we have ICAC. So please support amendments 357 to 369, the 13 amendments on ICAC.
Now, with the limited time left, I will comment on 121 IPCC and also head 122 the Hong Kong Police. In head 122 for the Hong Kong Police, well, this is a disastrous area. Why do I say so? Because I myself have raised 14 amendments, so I'm going to spend more time on these amendments. I think I have to speak 3 or 4 times on the Hong Kong Police Force because I've got 14 amendments, and head 121 I've got 20 amendments. 6 members have moved amendments. Albert Chen, Leung Hong, and myself, Fernando Zhang, Gary Fan, and James Teo have their respective amendments with respect to head 121 Hong Kong Police Force. That is to cut the subheads of the police And of course, some members have already commented on areas of their concern. I'm not going to repeat them. However, with the time left for me now, I would like to comment on something which you might have overlooked, or you may have never bothered about. So I'll speak on 573. I'm going to cut from head 122. An amount equivalent to the provision for salaries to pay everyone in the Hong Kong police force. Now, if you think that this is too harsh, perhaps you can consider my other amendments. Now, I like to comment on unfair treatment by the force on the underprivileged in Hong Kong. Now, I'm talking about the sex workers. It's been revealed that many sex workers have been subject to bullying by the police. Only a few of them have reported to the police because they are being bullied by police officers. Will it be useful at all for them to report these cases? And how can they be sure that justice will be done for them? This Green Bird is an organization to serve sex workers. They have conducted a survey. They say that among the 200 sex workers polled, over 15% of them have been intimidated or extorted by members of the police force in the past 6 months. Sometimes when they are being interviewed or given an ID check by police officers, they suffer intimidation. And many social workers have received complaints from sex workers that during their work, they might have a contact with members of the force. They may be arrested or interviewed, and they've been subject to very unreasonable and impolite treatment. Unreasonable treatment is already an understatement. I don't want to be too explicit. For instance, they have been subject to foul language, physical contact. They're not allowed to use mobile phones to seek assistance from friends, relatives, or lawyers. When being interviewed, they're not allowed to have a photocopy of the statements taken. They are forced to sign their consent to statements they don't agree to. And very few sex workers would complain to IPCC or CAPO because of the stigma they receive from members of the public. They also worry of possible discrimination after they have exposed their identity. They have had unpleasant encounter with the police in the past. They've been subject to impolite and unreasonable treatment, so they've lost confidence in the police. They dare not use this complaint mechanism, and that's part of the reasons why the complaint mechanism is not working. And many sex workers are worried of a retaliation by police officers. Well, for Mr. Kwok-hung, he has nothing to fear because whether he complains or not, he will be subject to retaliation in the future. But for sex workers, they are different. They're worried that police officers would target at them in their operations. Many sex workers who have been arrested in the past were arrested for no reason. So police officers have no respect for the proper procedures of arrest. And when sex workers are interviewed, their rights were ignored. For instance, some sex workers who were arrested in the past were not informed that they have the right to silence. And if they didn't agree to the statement taken, they could refuse to sign their consent. And very few sex workers knew that they had the right to call their relatives or lawyers or to ask for a photocopy of the statements taken. So the rights of the interviewees were not respected. Although they were given some notice to ask them to sign. In fact, after they had been thoroughly interviewed and intimidated. They were then asked to sign on the notice. They were not allowed to read carefully what's on the paper. And that's the reason why I'm moving this amendment to the budget. The meeting is now adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow.